In the beginning, if you wanted to know what your MBTI personality type was like, you would go to a website that looks something like this, fill out the form, and you would get a result that looks something like this. The problem is, people are not filling these forms out properly, and many times they are either lying to themselves or they have no self awareness. For example, I went to work and I asked one of my coworkers, "Hey, what's your Myers Briggs personality type?" And she said to me, "I am an ESTJ." And her comment made me question her because she seems like the most emotional person that I've ever met. So I said to her, "So you don't make decisions based on how you feel, you make decisions based on how you think?" She's like, "Yeah, ew, feelings." And when she said that to me, I really started to question how people are filling out these forms online to figure out what their personality type was like. The one that bothers me even more is when people say something like this. For example, I used to have this acquaintance that was a Myers Briggs certified practitioner, and she said to me, "I've been working on being more extroverted. So I used to be an introvert and now I'm an extrovert." And I'm kind of just face palming at this point because I don't really think that your personality changes when it comes to the Myers Briggs system. I think you can grow as a person and become a higher version of your specific personality type, but I don't necessarily think that you could change your type. So while I was in college, I was also professionally typed as an ENFP by a Myers Briggs practitioner. And I started doing some research online. And luckily for me, I discovered into the Dave Superpowers YouTube channel where he was talking about functions and how the functions is really what your personality type is like. And you shouldn't base what your personality based on those silly tests that you do online, but instead you base it on the functions and the order that you use your functions. So I'm like, sweet, so far so good, right? And other websites like Personality Hacker would also have their own version of this, and they were all really useful. They're all fantastic. They are all great, and we would not be where we are right now if it weren't for these systems. However, there was still something wrong because when I got my result as an ENFP back in college and I started researching how the functions work, I quickly asked myself, okay, I am an ENFP, but how come I feel like my extrovert thinking is stronger than my introvert feeling? And what is introvert feeling? I had no clue what it was. So I started doing my research and I found websites that look something like this and many other websites, obviously, to kind of research what introverted feeling was so that I can learn how to use it better. So over the years, I started practicing using introverted feeling and really just improving on learning what I like, what I want to do with my life, what makes me happy, what makes me unhappy, and just doing some self-work on self-assertiveness and just make sure that I am honoring that FI. Several years later, Dave Superpowers came back, this time alongside his real-life partner Shannon Renee, and they put together a new system called Objective Personality. And how Objective Personality works is that you would have two people go behind closed doors and type someone based on the video that they would send them. And if both operators get the same type, then clearly this is going to be a valid typing of this person because it was done through a scientific method called the double blind test. Now, is this really objective? I don't think so, because as long as you have humans involved, it cannot truly be objective. But this is the closest thing to objectivity that we have right now. And I think the closest thing is better than nothing. The first concept that they introduced was jumpers. So if you are an INTJ, for example, you could be the traditional NITE INTJ, or you could be the jumper NIFI type of INTJ. Both people would be similar, but they would also be quite different on their communication style. Take a look at the standard ENFP, for example. The standard ENFP is the NEFI ENFP, and this is the one that we are all familiar with. However, there's also the jumper ENFP type with the NE and TE as their first two functions that they would use. They would skip over the FI and go straight to TE. And when they first told me that I was an NETE, I kind of denied it because I've been spending so much time in my life working on that FI that I felt like it would invalidate the hard work that I put into it. But at the end, when they finally typed me, I turned out I was an NETE, and I just look back, 6 to 7 years ago when I did question myself why my TE seems stronger than my FI, and it makes a lot of sense why I was an NETE. Do keep in mind that the function stacks still matter, so that even though you're a jumper, it just means that you develop your TE first. But if you put the work into it, then your FI could actually be stronger than your TE, assuming that you do put the work into it. I'll talk about this into more detail in another video, but for now, this is how jumper ENFPs or jumper types work. The next concept that the Objective Personality team introduced was the self above tribe concept versus the tribe above self concept. And how it works is that If you are someone with lead FI or TI, then you are self above tribe. If you have FETE as your lead function, then you are tribe above self. EPs and IJs are balanced with self and tribe because they have their tribe function and their self function right in the middle. So some EPs and IJs are self above tribe when they have their FI and TI as their dominant function. Then you can also have an EP and IJ that is tribe above self when they have their tribe function as their savior function instead of their identity function. The next concept that they introduced was gathering new information versus organizing known information, or control versus chaos. So anyone with NE or SE are lead gatherers, and anyone with NI or SI lead are organizers. Anyone with an EP type are extreme gatherers to the point where it's an addiction, where else the IJs are the extreme organizers to the point where they are control freaks. EJs and IPs are balanced with gathering and organizing, and there are some EJs and IPs that have gathering or chaos above control or organizing, and you also have EJs and IPs that have control and organizing above chaos and gathering. The next concept that they introduce is called animals, and how animals work is that your functions have a specific order that they interact on, making you a specific type within that personality type umbrella. So let's look at this ENFP, for example. This person is lead consume first, and then afterwards their next animal is FISI, which is sleep, and then the next animal is SITE, which is blast. And last but not least, their last animal is NETE, which is play. So what consume is it's gathering new information for the self, while blast is teaching known information to the tribe. Sleep is a combination of your identity function, so that could be your TI or FI, in conjunction with your organizing function, which is SI or NI. The play animal is a combination of your gathering function, which is NE or SE, as well as your tribe function, which is FE or TE. And this is what consume would look like based on your own personality type. So what is consume? Consume is gathering new information and ideas for yourself. It could also be gathering new information and facts for yourself. It's also deep listening, learning and researching, and this is an introverted animal. There's also many kinds of consume, such as the NF consume. People with NEFI or FINE has NF consume. People have ST consume if they have SETI or TISE in their function stack. They have SF consume if they have SE or FI or FISE, and they have NT consume if they have NETI or TINE. And what pretty much this means is that this is how you would gather new information for self. This is the kind of new information that you would prefer to gather. So ENFPs, for example, they have NF consume, so they would prefer to gather NF type of information. Whereas someone that is an ISTP, for example, they might prefer ST facts kind of consume. Someone that is an ESFP or INTJ might prefer SF consume, and someone that is an ENTP or INTP might prefer NT type of consume. Next, we have blast. So these are the types and the kind of blast that they would have. And what is blast? Blast is teaching known information to the tribe. It's also teaching known facts to the tribe. It's also getting started. So some people have trouble getting started, and people with higher blast tend to be better at getting started doing something. Blast is also controlling or guiding the tribe based on your sexual modalities, which we'll cover later on. It's also bragging, and some people with high blast tend to brag a lot. And it's also an extroverted animal. There's also 4 different kinds of blast. So for example, there's the NF blast with the INFJs, for example, who like to use NIFE or FENI for the ENFJs. Then you have the ST blast, which is the ENFP's blast or ISTJ. And you have the SITE or TISI. Then you have the SF blast from ISFJs or ESFJs with the SIFE or FESI. And you have the NT blast, which is NIT or TNI, and everyone's familiar with this because INTJs and ENTJs tend to have this kind of blast. Next, we have sleep, and this is the kind of sleep that you would have based on your specific personality type. And what is sleep? Sleep is the internal processing that goes inside your head. It can be processing your emotions, puzzling information, problem solving, or prioritizing. It is also self-awareness. It's also setting boundaries with the tribe. It's also conserving energy. And this is an introverted animal. The NF sleep is NIFI or FINI. So INTJs or other personality type that has the same function stack as the INTJs would have NF sleep. Then there's the ST sleep, which is SITI. So someone that might be an ISFJ, ESFJ, ENTP, or someone that has those function stack would have this kind of sleep. There's also the SF sleep, which is FISI or SIFI. So ENFPs definitely have this kind of sleep, as well as ISTJs, ESTJs, and INFPs. And finally, we have the NT sleep, which is NITI or TINI. So someone that might be an ISTP, INFJ, or someone with those function stack would have this kind of sleep. Next, we have play, and this is what your play would look like based on your specific personality type. And how does play work? Well, play is engaging the tribe, and it's a two-way interaction. So think about ping pong or tennis where you're going back and forth with a person. So for example, I say something to you and then you take what I say and you add on your own piece to it and you give it back to me. And the higher your play is in your animal stack, the more fluid you will be when it comes to engaging the tribe. So this is expending your energy for a tribe or going out of your way to help someone in your tribe. This is also social fluidity. So the higher your play is, the more socially fluid you could be in social interactions. This is also showing off, but in a more negative side, you could also be more needy from needing tribe validation or tribe presence. This is also an extroverted animal, and people have NF play if they have NEFE or FENE, such as ESFJs, for example, or anyone else that have the same function stack as them. There's also the ST play, which is SETE or TSE, and people that have this could be ENTJs or INTJs or someone that have the same function stack as those guys. There's also SF play, which is SEFE or FESE. You know, ISTPs have this kind of play, ESTPs have this kind of play, INFJs have this kind of play, ENFJs have this kind of play. So SF play looks like this. And finally, we have the NT play, which is NET or TNE, so ENFPs or their counterparts that have the same function stack as them would have NT play. The next concept that they introduced in the objective personality system is Saviours and Demons. And basically, your first and second function are your savior functions, and your third and fourth function are your demon functions. Savior function means this is automatic for you. You do it unconsciously. You're quite good at it. And demon functions usually take some more effort. And when you do get good at it, it's conscious competence, not unconscious competence. There's also saviors when it comes to your first and second animal, and also demons when it comes to your third and fourth animal. This adds another layer of complexity to this personality typing system because some type that might be perceived as introverted might actually have extroverted animals as their savior, and somehow they come across as extroverted even though they might be an INFP, for example. Your first function or animal is typically overused and oversensitive, so this is something that you would need to kind of back down a little bit because you're overusing it. There's also your second savior function or animal, which tend to be in a more balanced state. And then you have your third function or third animal, which is something that you enjoy doing as a hobby or it's a learned skill. And finally, you have your fourth function or fourth animal, which is your life mission to get really good at in order to prevent bad things from happening to you as you get older in life. So as you can see with a different animal combination, you could have an extremely introverted ENFP that looks like this. So consume, sleep, blast, play. And on the flip side of things, you can have the extremely extroverted ENFP with play, blast, consume, sleep. The next concept that they teach in the objective personality system is tidal waves. And how tidal waves work is that when you overuse your savior functions and you underuse your demon functions, somewhere along the lines, life will want to balance itself out. So whenever you're overdoing one thing, then the other half will want to make sure it gets its fair share on the spotlight. So it's either going to crash on you hard and ruin your life, or if you've been taking care of it, then the crash will be a lot weaker. So let's dive into this a little bit more deeper. So the hero's journey is a concept that they really emphasize in the objective personality system. And basically, when you're young, you start off in the world using your savior functions and savior animals. And as you know, when you start something new, you always get beginner's luck or you get newbie gains. So if you go to the gym, you tend to get fit quicker the first few months because you have that newbie gains. And as you get older, you're going to have more and more life problems. And those life problems usually stem from you disrespecting your fourth function or your fourth animal. A lot of people will never get to the point where they use their fourth animal or fourth function because it's just too painful to work on it. They just don't like it. However, there's a few people, maybe 20% of the world population, that eventually figure it out in their 40s. And some people might call it as midlife crisis or an awakening. But basically, you figure out that, hey, you know what? I've been doing this thing too much and it's causing me all my life problems. And now I need to work on this other area that I really hate, but I know will fix all my life problems. So definitely you need to work on that fourth function. So for example, if you're lead SI or NI, you need to work on gathering new information or things using your SE or NE. If you're lead SE or NE, you need to start learning how to organize your known information or things. So that would be using your SI or your NI. If you're lead FI or TI, you need to start working on serving the tribe so you don't get tribe hate. So that's using your FE or your TE. Lead FE or TE users, need to start doing things selfishly for themselves without asking for permission from the tribe and actually embodying their message. So using their FI or their TI. You don't want to be an EP that is completely chaotic and have zero self-control, and as a result of not controlling yourself, someone else ends up controlling your life or your things. So Britney Spears, for example, has been typed as an EP, and she is chaotic, she's out of control, and guess what? Her dad ended up controlling her life, controlling her finances, and that's the last thing any EPs want to do, is someone else controlling them. This is the worst nightmare for EPs who don't learn to control themselves. And then on the IJ side of things, they need to respect the new information that's coming in and do something with that new information. So looking at Steve Jobs, for example, they told him ahead of time that he needs to get surgery for his pancreatic cancer, and he just didn't want to do it because he's a control freak. He's an IG control freak. He did not respect the new information. And this resulted to him dying when he could have actually lived or at least prolonged his life. And then you have IPs that get tribe hate, and it's because of their arrogance and thinking they're better than everyone else. That could be true. They might be better than everyone else. But if you're not respecting the tribe and serving the tribe, then you're going to get tribe hate. They're going to come with pitchforks and a torch, and they're going to come and take you out. I mean, obviously, this is just a extreme example. This doesn't really happen, but you don't want to be that IP that's just doing things for themselves all day. Set aside one day a week to just serve the tribe, and that's good enough, Just get your reps in and then get out. And then you don't want to be an EJ that does not embody what they teach. So for example, Oprah is super rich, and then she lectures people on income equality. She gives weight loss advice even though she's overweight. She is not married but gives marriage advice. She gives parental advice and she has no kids. And as you can see, she's teaching a lot of things to people, but she doesn't embody her message, so she comes across as a hypocrite. So you don't want to be that kind of EJ where you're just doing things for other people, but you're not embodying the things that you are trying to help people with. Make sure that you embody those qualities first, and then you can go teach people. Next, we have the blast last animal. And if you have blast last, then you need to learn how to speak up, because a lot of problems in your life is from the lack of speaking up. You might feel disrespected at the workplace or with your coworkers or with your family, and that's because you're not taking the time to teach them all this valuable information that you've gathered over the years. And also, the biggest fallacy with blast last people is they think they know something, but if you can't teach what you know, then do you really know it? And this is a more controversial question, obviously, but I think the answer would be you don't know it as well as you think as you do. Because when you actually start teaching something, you actually learn when you teach things to people. So if you're blast last, this is something that you would need to work on, is to start teaching. So a good first stepping stone would be joining a local Toastmasters, because that would help you improve your public speaking, and you can move on from there. If you are play last, then you need to start working on engaging the tribe and spending time with the tribe and serving the tribe. And a lot of things that play last people would suffer in their life is that they have reached great success and no one cares and no one likes them, and at the end of their life they're completely lonely. Everyone abandoned them because no one likes them. So it just takes once a week or even once a month to spend time with family and friends or people that you care about, and by doing small deposits into your tribe, you're not gonna die alone, lonely, and everyone hates you. Next, we have sleep last. So people with sleep last as their animal need to take care of their health. So they need to get more rest, take more time off. They also need to take the time to process their feelings and thoughts, just to make sure they are aligned with their values or their personal truths. So I have sleep last, and this is something I'm personally working on. I can use my sleep last, as Dave have told me in my typing audios, but it's still work in process, and this is something that is going to be my lifelong challenge to work on. And then if you have consume last, then you need to learn how to gather new information, because if you don't, bad things can happen to you. For example, if you are an IJ working on an industry that is about to go obsolete, then if you take the time to gather new information, you might know that it's going to be obsolete and you can change career. As painful as that sounds, having change that's going to save your career, your family is not going to be homeless, and you're going to be okay. This also goes for health. So if you have a health scare, you want to get information on that right away and do something about it. And consume is very important to just see what's coming so that you can be prepared and do something about it. The last concept that they introduced is the sexual modalities. And the sexual modalities could be someone that's double feminine, which is tester and visual, or feminine and masculine, which is visual and tester. There's also double masculine with kinesthetic and audio, and masculine feminine with audio kinesthetic. A masculine function is solid, immovable. They have good memory and tend to be confident at using that function. And someone with feminine functions tend to be more flexible or forgetful and uncertain when it comes to using that function. The first letter is going to be your sensory function, so either your SI or your SE. And the second letter is going to be your tribe function, which is your FE or your TE. So when you combine all these different standard types, jumper types, animal interaction combination, and sexual modalities, you actually get 512 different types. And this makes more sense because you can't really pigeonhole everyone within 16 types. There's so many people in this world and everyone is so unique and different that really 512 makes more sense. And I could even argue that this is more than 512 because I think men and women are quite different. So maybe you can even add this as times 2 just to add even more variety to this typing system. Now, how does the typing rules work for the objective personality system? So when it comes to sexual modalities, which we just covered, feeling and thinking are opposite sexual modalities, and sensing and intuition are also opposite sexual modalities. So if you have masculine feeling, then your thinking is going to be feminine and vice versa. If you have masculine sensing, then your intuition function is going to be feminine and vice versa. Next, we're going to cover the typing rules for animals. Your first animal must be your first two or your first function and third function. So for example, if you are an EP, then your lead animals is consume and play. If you are an IP, your lead animals is consume or sleep. If you are an IJ, your lead animals are blast or sleep. And if you are an EJ, your lead animals is blast or play. The second animal cannot be the opposite of your first animal. So keep in mind that consume and blast are opposites and sleep and play are opposites. So if you are consume first, you cannot be blast second and vice versa. If you are play first, then you cannot be sleep second and vice versa. Next, we're going to cover info dominant versus energy dominant. So someone that is info dominant has consume and blast in the first 3 animals, and someone with energy dominant has play and sleep in the first 3 animals. Info dominants tend to obsess over having the most accurate information, while energy dominant tend to be obsessed with managing their energy levels. So that means if you're info dominant, you need to learn how to manage your energy as well. And if you're energy dominant, then you need to learn how to make sure that you have the most accurate information. So the last thing we're going to cover here is the difference between EP/IJ and EJ and IP. So basically, this is going to be a double decider versus a double observer. A double decider is someone that is balanced with self and tribe. They have their tribe and self function right in the middle, and that's their thinking and feeling functions. And a double observer is someone that's balanced with gathering or chaos and gathering or control, and they have their sensing and intuition in their middle functions. EPs and IJs have things problems and they like talking about things, while EJs and IPs have people problems and they like talking about people. In conclusion, I think that the objective personality system is the most practical personality system available right now, and that their core message is very effective. It's super easy to use actually, because if you think about it, okay, if you are blast last, well, you know what you need to work on. You need to work on blast. So you need to do public speaking, you need to learn how to speak up. If you are SF last, for example, like me, then I need to learn how to value the coolness factor in the physical world, So I need to dress nicer, need to get more rip. If you are sleep last, you need to get more rest. And, just knowing what you need to work on is already weight off your shoulder, because it saves you time from guesswork and you can get straight to work on that area that needs working in your own personality type. I'll give you a concrete example. Because I'm an EP and I have SI last, my biggest problem is controlling my finances. I'm the kind of person that tends to go in and out of debt. And this year, before the pandemic happened, I controlled myself. I forced myself to pay off my debt instead of spending it on things that I wanted to buy. And guess what? I avoided a huge tidal wave, because when the pandemic hit, I was debt free. And it was the biggest weight off my shoulder, and I actually dodged a tidal wave. So as you can see, the core message is very practical and it's very easy to follow. And a lot of people can easily grow from this after you know what your fourth function is or your fourth animal is. At the same time, their core message is also reflective of chaos, because what is a tidal wave? A tidal wave is chaos, right? So in a way, you kind of think to yourself, okay, are tidal waves really that bad, or is it that bad for IJs? So it's something to think about, obviously. But I do think overall it's very practical and it's useful. And finally, the objective personality system has a great community. From the hundreds of people that I have interviewed, some of them have become my personal friends. I've met some of them in real life. And for the most part, people are great. There's a small percentage that are batshit crazy, or I personally think they're idiots and I would never want to associate myself with them. I think they're repulsive. But that's a very small percentage, because for the most part, most people are fantastic in this community.